Elon Musk walked into the U.S. government with a chainsaw, promised to save $2 trillion, and walked out 6 months later saying he was somewhat successful. So, what actually happened? Today, we follow the money and the wreckage. So what did Musk and his DOGE team actually do? Well, they did 3 things: cut workers, cancel contracts, and cause chaos. According to its own website, DOGE terminated 13,440 contracts, 15,887 grants, and 264 leases over its 10-month existence. And the human cost was staggering. More than 260,000 workers left federal service due to Trump administration initiatives in 2025, including reductions in force, early retirement, deferred resignations, and a hiring freeze. Entire agencies were dismantled. DOGE staffers entered the U.S. Agency for International Development and the U.S. Institute of Peace, firing staff, taking over headquarters, and within 2 hours, most of 300-plus staffers at USIP were gone. One former employee described it as a complete destruction. Now, here's where it gets uncomfortable. Elon Musk promised $2 trillion in savings, then quietly revised that down to $1 trillion, then $150 billion. That final figure was just 7.5% of his original promise. And even that number is disputed. While DOGE claimed $215 billion in savings, a New York Times analysis found many of its top savings claims to be inaccurate. In fact, federal spending actually increased in 2025 from $6.95 trillion to more than $7 trillion. The department created to cut spending presided over a spending increase. And it gets even worse. The cuts didn't just fail to save money. They may have cost money. A nonpartisan advocacy group found that DOGE's actions cost taxpayers around $135 billion in its first 100 days alone, through loss of federal worker productivity, repeated fire and rehire cycles, and paid leave. And that doesn't even count the lawsuits. DOGE has never given an accurate or transparent accounting of how its work saved taxpayer dollars, and its savings claims are full of errors that reflect little understanding of the federal procurement process. In one example, DOGE claimed $4.3 million in savings from canceling a contract, but the linked contract was not terminated, was worth only $150,000, and almost all the money had already been spent. And here's the sleeper issue nobody is talking about enough. DOGE gutted the IRS. The IRS may lose up to 1/3 of its 100,000-strong workforce. Budget analysts calculated that if 22,000 IRS employees leave, the agency would lose $8.5 billion in net revenue in 2026 alone, and nearly $198 billion over 10 years, simply because there are fewer people available to conduct tax audits. Think about that. You fire the tax collectors to save money, then you collect less tax. It's like a restaurant firing all its waiters to cut costs, then wondering why revenue dropped. So, here's my honest take. The idea behind DOGE wasn't entirely wrong. Government waste is real. Bloated contracts are real. Agencies that haven't been audited in decades are real. But the execution was reckless. The promises were fraudulent. And Musk himself later admitted DOGE was only somewhat successful and suggested he wouldn't do it again. That is not the language of a man who believes he changed history. That is the language of a man who knows the numbers don't hold up. DOGE produced the largest peacetime workforce cut on record, and spending kept rising anyway, because cutting salaries barely touches a budget dominated by transfer payments and entitlements. You can fire every government worker and still not fix a $2 trillion deficit. Musk either knew that and lied, or didn't know and was out of his depth. Neither is a good look. DOGE is now effectively dead. In November 2025, it was announced that DOGE no longer existed, with the Office of Personnel Management assuming most of its tasks. The chainsaw has been put down, but 260,000 people lost their jobs. Agencies are still rebuilding, and the deficit is larger than when Musk walked in. Was it worth it? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. Subscribe to Elon Musk Insider for daily coverage of the tech and political stories that the headlines bury. See you next time.